Woohoo! Hello chess friends and welcome to Azarov's chess channel and welcome to the round 5 of the World Championship match between Magnus Carlsen and Fabiano Caruana. So finally I think we got a game today that was really good and really dynamic. Caruana played really bravely. He played this wing gambit in the Sicilian defense. I really like this game, and finally I think they played like they can, and I think this is the best game from the series so far. Well, you see, today's game was a little bit sharper than all of the other games, and I think this is now Caruana's idea. He has to win a game in order to, of course, the match game. He has to win the match game in these 12 rounds. If the match game goes into rapid or blitz games, I think Magnus Carlsen has a huge advantage, and of course Caruana would love to solve the problems in the first 12 games. So let's see today's game. A little bit more improvement in Caruana's opening. Again, we had the Sicilian like 2 times before, while Caruana played with the white pieces. And let's see now this improved line by Caruana. So we had here, of course, e4, c5, knight on f3, knight on c6, and now bishop to b5. Again, the Rossolimo attack, and now g6 by Carlsen, perfectly fine. And this line I like much more with castling. You see, you are not challenged here to take this knight on c6. If your opponent plays a6, that weakens more this queen side. You can then take bishop on c6. I like simply more this line when you're not challenged to not to take here this knight on c6. Here after castling, bishop to g7 by Carlsen, and now we have rook to e1. And if a6 now comes, you can play also the move bishop to f1. It's a very popular move in this opening line. You have castled, you have castled very fast. You see, you have a nice diagonal for your bishop, and maybe you have preparations to play c3 and d4. So this is, I think, a better line for Caruana. And here now after e5, in order to prevent moves, this c3 or d4 idea, now Caruana plays a really sharp line with b4. And this is now this wing gambit, and it's really a sharp line. It's not so easy to defend against this opening. I talked about this evaluation of pawns in my middle game strategy here on my YouTube channel, and I've talked about this. When your opponent takes here this pawn on b4, you basically can create here the central attack, and you can steal maybe black center. So I'll show you the link of this middle game strategy video that I've created, and I think it meets with this idea of Fabiano Caruana. In order to get the c5 deflected here from the center, he wants it to have here on the square b4, and then we can gain some central control. This all is possible because you see, with this Rossolimo attack, you're playing very actively in the opening, and I think this b4 is very sharp. But I think also that Magnus Carlsen was prepared for such things because they know all of these lines very deeply, and of course now Carlsen took with the knight. If you have c takes b4, it can maybe with a3 in order to deflect this pawn again here more to the queen side, and prepare, of course, the c3 and d4. Well, it can be met maybe with b3. This is well, a more calm line of this wing gambit in this Rossolimo attack. So after maybe c takes b3, maybe knight from g to e7, a knight on c3, and well, it's again an equal position. So you see, this wing gambit can also be avoided with this very common move b3. And But I like simply this preparation by Caruana. He now tries at least to find more aggressive lines in this Rosolime attack, and he's trying to surprise Magnus Carlsen, and that shows, of course, that he really wants to win this match, and of course he's really hungry for the world title. Now Carlsen took with the knight on b4, and we have here bishop on b2 by Caruana. Of course, this e5 pawn is now target, and we have now a6 by Carlsen. This is a very good move by Carlsen. I think it's the best move because it really challenges now this bishop. Of course, if the bishop retreats maybe to bishop on f1, then of course we can play this move d6, and this c3 d4 idea is maybe a little bit too slow. If now white plays c3, we can play knight on c6, and then after d4, after a couple of trades in the center, we have here this move bishop to g4. And this of course bishop is indirectly attacking here this d4 because we are using the spin on the queen, and white will be forced to play maybe here e5 in order to open some files. But now we have knight from g to e7, and after maybe e takes d6, we have queen to d6, and it's perfectly playable here for black. So this line doesn't bring so much, you see. Of course, if now white plays here d takes c5, we can take first the queen and then the bishop. So we have here also sort of a pin here on this bishop, and you see this wouldn't be a very good line for Caruana. So after a6, Caruana played here the move a3, attacking also this knight on b4. So we have here a takes b5, a takes b4, rook takes on a1, bishop takes on a1. So now comes this move d6. This c takes d4, pardon me, c takes b4 doesn't bring us so much because, as I said, we want to deflect all of the central pawns more to the queen side, and then try to play the small d4. Of course, if c takes b4, then we have here a triple pawn situation on the b file. So of course Magnus not gonna do that. So now he played d6. We have here now b takes c5, of course, and now Carlsen plays knight from g to e7. D takes c5 again doesn't bring so much because Kana would then have here this move queen to e2, attacking immediately here this b5 pawn. Of course, the threat is also to take it with a check, and we have also problems here with this e5 pawn. So maybe bishop to d7, but this is I don't think a good line for black, because with the stocks were problems around the king, well, and this very nice centralized knight. We have here also a weak pawn structure for black. So in a potential endgame, I think white is on the advantage here. So after b takes c5, Carlsen goes immediately here for the fast castling, and now Caruana plays here queen to e2. C takes d6 doesn't bring also so much because we have queen to d6, and then maybe after d4 we can simply take. This leads to multiple piece trades here, and after queen to d4, here is a very nice move b4. This pawn, although it's a little bit advanced and it's not protected, it's basically hard to attack. That's the problem. And even if Carlsen wouldn't have this pawn, now with the queens off the board, this dark square problems doesn't mean so much. You see, they're not really potential threats. And of course, if Caruana would somehow even take this pawn, this would be an endgame with the pawn up. And we saw in this couple of games before that these games were always ending in withdrawals. And of course this b4, I think Carlsen saw of course this line, and again this would be a drawish position. So so that's why Caruana didn't take. He played here this move queen to e2, and now Carlsen plays this move b4. He has to play it. Basically it's the best move because you see bishop to d7 isn't so good. Then we have this c takes d6, so that's the problem. You see this b4 idea, we create some space here, again preventing here this knight to jump in on c3. So white's piece is a little bit paralyzed. Of course he has advanced here his attack, but this b4 move is perfectly fine. Queen to b5 doesn't bring so much. We have immediately knight on c6, and of course this is playable. We are also protecting here this b4, so perfectly equal position here. So here Caruana played the move queen to c4, and now Carlsen finds a very nice move, queen to a5. Of course with this immediately attack here on this bishop on a1, and now well, Caruana has to respond. He creates his here also his attack. C takes d6. Now finally he goes through with his pawn, and we have now bishop on a6. Of course with this in between attack on the queen. And now Caruana plays also the best move, queen to c7, and of course it's now forcing a trade of the queens, because if Carlsen of course doesn't react, here we have immediate checkmate. So of course he took. We have d takes the queen on c7, and now knight on c6. Now it's an equal position, but of course you see white black has the bishop pair. Maybe if the position gets open, this would be of course better for black, although the material is equal, but this pawn is also annoying. It has to be taken, and now Caruana played here first the move c3, and of course Carlsen doesn't want to take here b takes c3, because then the knight can get out with the tempo, and then we can play also knight on d5, which will really threaten here to connect these pawns, this e and d pawn, and we would then also create by opening this e file, we would then also create this very weak e5 pawn. So that's why Carlsen plays first here king on d7. He wants to get rid of this pawn. So now Caruana of course took, hit the pawn on b4. Now we have this in between attack, rook on a8 attacking the bishop, and a1 we have bishop on c3, king on c7, and now d3. And here Carlsen played a move king to b6. I did some analysis. Also I let the computer work here, and I try to find the best continuation here for black. You see, although we are pawn up as black, but there are these simple targets. When you playing a chess games, you want to find of course these weaknesses in your opponent's position. So this d3 pawn is obviously a weak pawn, and we have here also this b4. So of course there are this our objects of the attack. So, and the problem is that that it's really hard for white to defend these pawns. And here I consider this move maybe b5 instead of king on g6. Of course we can also always play the king on g6 here, or maybe king on a6 then after that. So this b5 maybe would really fix this pawn on b4, and we could maybe create some attacking chances here through f8 off on this pawn. And if we create here a pass pawn with this bishop pair, I think this would be a winning game for black. Although here the position is equal also after this move b5, from a strategical point of view, it I like it more because we are really fixing this b4, and it cannot be advanced. It can only be defended by this bishop, and maybe then after that by the rook. But you see, then we have again this d3 pawn also hanging, and I think with these two weaknesses, Carlsen could have maybe go simply and go for a pawn, and then when he equalizes the material, play on the advantage of the bishop pair. So instead of b5, Carlsen played here king on g6. We have bishop on d2. Of course, he wants here play the bishop on e3 with a check. Now we have rook. A rook on the d8. Of course, we are playing simply for this weak pawn. Bishop to e3, king on b5. Now knight on c3, king on b4. Of course, we have to take, but now after knight on, here is this problem. If you play after knight on c3, if you play the move king on a6, you would be checkmated immediately. That's the problem. So of course Carlsen did some good calculation here, and he took here the pawn on b4, and you see again we have this problem with this d3. So Caruana solved it very effectively and goes into a drawish line. He plays here knight on d5, bishop takes on d5, e takes d5, rook takes d5. Now we have rook on b1, king on c3, of course the rook takes, and now knight on d8, protecting this f7, and also this pawn is hanging. So after rook on c7, of course knight on e1 doesn't work, because then you can play immediately here maybe e4 and pin the knight here on the first rank. So that's why Caruana goes simply here for this draw line, and we have king on d3, now king on f1, h5 by Carlsen. He wants to keep his pawns on the light squares, you see, because you have the dark square bishop. Of course, you don't want to block out your pawns with your block out your bishop with your own pawns. So we have here h3, and now king on e4, which really now challenges white to play this knight on g5. We have king on f5, now simple trade of the knights, and we have now a situation 3 on 3 pawns, bishops and rooks, and of course it's a draw here. Magnus played bishop on f6, and in this position both players agreed to a draw. Although this was a draw, I think this was really a dynamic draw. I like this wing gambit. Maybe we in the next game when Caruana plays with white, maybe we see a more improved wing gambit here. So I really loved, and while I was watching this game, when I saw this move b5, I really told myself woohoo. And my brother also sent me a message, and he wrote b5 was played, b4 was played, pardon me, and this was really something. So of course you see these are the games that I like. I think this was the best game that the two have played so far in the series, and of course I would love to watch more of this dynamic lines. So thank you for watching, guys. You can also watch all of my Magnus Carlsen versus Fabiano Caruana videos, and you can also watch my middle game strategy video with this evaluation of pawns, where I'm talking about more about this wing gambit lines, how you can steal your opponent's center by sacrificing a pawn. And you can also, guys, subscribe to my channel. Thanks you for watching. Chess is the best, of course.